Okay, Ross. So, we talked previously about your wins, and everybody loves hearing about other people's wins after they've won, all that sort of stuff. But
Do they? Do
yeah,
they, Simon? I can tell you about the bad days if you like as well.
what makes a good? You talked about it in the previous part. What makes a good race reader? I mean, you know, is it because you go into it with an open mind? Is that what makes a good race reader?
I think. Well, I mean, if again, it's boring, but what probably makes me a good race reader is having watched tens of thousands of races. Um, it's always dull, isn't it? That the way to get good at something is to just do it a lot. But I know the Malcolm Gladwell thing is a bit cliched nowadays, but that 10,000 hours thing, but that deliberate practice, I think that's the thing. Like trying to go back and learn this kind of stuff. For example, if you're watching a video back, like this is a really quick shortcut, I think, and someone will probably come on and say, there's always one person who will come on and say that's absolutely
All
bombing.
interaction's good.
Yeah.
We encourage interaction.
All right. So yeah, come on. Yeah. No. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I will reply to those comments as well. We'll maybe get back onto that when we're talking about in the know later on. I agree. All interaction is good. Otherwise, what's the point in doing this? The start and the end of the race are absolutely crucial, and I think everyone watches the end of the race and ignores what happens at the start. So, and I think a lot of the time, if you're in a rush, a really quick way to watch a race back, I think, and read a race is to just see where they started out, see where they finished, and and work out. Well, if the first three home were the first three jumping out of the boxes, then you know that the speed was favoured, and anything that comes off the speed is worth watching. But everyone watches the eye catchers coming from the back, and I think the real value is in a lot of the time in the races where the front runner should finish 10th and keeps plugging on for 4th or 5th. But people don't look at that because they see the one weaving a passage through the back. But you need to know, you're telling a story, each race is a story. And you need the backstory, such as, draw bias, ground, the form of the horses coming into it.
Would you take the market into account? If somebody drifted from 5 to 10, you'd expect it maybe not to run up to its best. Would you take that into consideration?
I wouldn't take drifters into account, but I do take horses running poorly when the market's very positive into account, and then trying to understand if there's a reason. Especially there's loads of it, good bumper horses in novice hurdles they'll go off 4-1 on debut, get beaten 7th, and everyone will go, they're no good. And you know that they're going to pop up in a handicap in time, but people have forgot. 2-year-olds going off 6-4, 7-4, or recently, the worst bet in the world is a 3-year-old handicap debutant who's not placed, finished 5th, 6th, 7th in the qualifying runs, and everyone says this is thrown in. And it'll go off 6-4. There was one last night at Chelmsford. It'll go off 6-4, it'll get beat, and everyone will go, we were wrong. And you weren't wrong, it's just a massive leap from mid-division in a novice to winning a handicap first time out. And that horse will win, you just need to keep the faith and find when it'll win. But you need to take all that into account. So people will look at that, your average punter who's just popped into the shop to have a bet at Chelmsford will go, wow, I thought that was thrown in. It's finished 4th. It's run no sort of race. But it's an almost impossible leap. And when a horse actually makes that leap, you know you're onto a good one. But follow that horse. Keep an eye on it. The market told you this horse was fancied. It didn't work out today. This horse might run 7, 8, 9 times this season. You only need to be on it a couple of times when it's right. If it didn't work out today, fine. But watching those races back, I think, is key. I think it's absolutely crucial. Making notes next to horses who run against the story of the race. If the pace held up, did something come from the back? Make a note. If the pace collapsed, who hung about the longest? Make a note. If a horse went all the way down the inside at Punter and got the dream run down the rail and bolted up by 5 lengths, put something by it saying everything went right. Don't take it as read. It's those things. And then when you come back to them in 3 weeks, you'll go, oh yeah, I remember that. And once you get that, you start to get almost like an encyclopedia of horses that were advantage or disadvantage. And that's where you find your angles, I think.
Okay, now, speed figures. You tell me that people misunderstand them. when is, I mean, something that I don't understand is if a horse runs a fast time at somewhere like Beverley, and then there was a famous case last year where there was a bit of controversy. It was running at Royal Ascot somewhere.
Yeah.
Didn't pan out for the speed figure. So when is a speed figure a good speed figure and when isn't it?
When is it? Yeah, it's a good question. It's the holy grail, mate. Yeah. I think a lot of speed figures can be used as blunt instruments. They can be like, this horse ran a good figure, therefore it will run a good figure again and again and again. For me, it's just another tool in your arsenal. For me, it is 100% the most important tool, personally, when I'm betting. Mainly on the races that I bet on. It may be not as important in, I don't know, handicap chasers, for example, where mistakes come into it more, or jumping ability, but it is an indicator of a horse's raw ability, especially in maidens and novices, I think. So if I can't remember the horse, I think it was George Belly or Alice Haynes, wasn't it? White and green silks. My brain's completely gone, but it ran in the Coventry, maybe. I think.
I can't remember. My brain's gone too.
Yeah.
I've got to write your name down.
Yeah. Fair. See, but this is the other thing. 10 years ago, I would have been able to tell you that horse, the figure it did, the owner, every race it ran in. You just get old, don't you? You forget these things. So you've got to understand when that figure is going to be replicated. So, for example, that was a debutant figure, I think, and I think debutant figures it's hard to follow them up, because I think a horse runs its absolute face off on debut, doesn't learn a great deal, goes to Royal Ascot, completely different experience. You know, you're going from corrugated iron at Ripon to running up that hill at Ascot, and I guess it's like driving a Porsche through a muddy field. You know, sometimes it's what's right for those conditions aren't necessarily right on the day. So I think the speed figure is a number that tells you how well this horse has run. And when you've got winning novices and maidens, that tells you how good is this horse. And again, just keep that information in mind. For example, I love 2-year-old group races and listed races, because what happens is those horses then run up against each other, and often I'll just ignore all the subsequent runs and I'll go, who's got the most raw ability based on their novice or maiden win. They might have been beaten into 5th next time out in a Group 3. This horse might have won a listed race, because people will take the black type runs as gospel, whereas I think that first win is where you really see, how good is this horse? And like you said, yeah, if a horse does a fantastic figure over 6 furlongs and good to firm at Ripon, anyone who's expecting that horse to replicate it over 7 in heavy at Newbury is barking at the wrong tree. But that's what, if you get, I can go on right now and I'll tell you, I can sort by ground, I can sort by trip, I can sort by everything, and you can say, okay, it's 6 furlongs on soft ground today. This horse has on numbers, the best chance. So I think it's about using them in the right time. It's about working out how that figure was achieved and how it can be replicated in the future. Whereas a lot of people will go, that was a really fast time, and expect that to copy and paste every next run.
Okay, now you told me that you prefer 2-year-old and 3-year-old races over 6 to 10 furlongs on the flat, so that's fairly specialised. Why? Is that to do with the times again?
Well, it's to do with, it's an edge, isn't it? It's a specialism, and I think that's what, some people will love. I know someone who loves staying handicap chasers, and maybe it's because I have ADHD. I can't get to the end of a replay of a handicap chase without getting distracted. So if it's a 90-second one, I'm fine. But I think, personally, I think the most important thing is finding something where you've got enough information to get an opinion, but the market doesn't have all the information. So, and you also don't want to, the 5 furlong sprints are a bit of a lottery. You go over longer distances, the pace can be unreliable. Today at Sandown, we're recording this on the Friday of the 2-day meet at Sandown. It's kind of one of my favourite days because I love a 3-roll race at Sandown, for example, because Sandown, Newbury, Newmarket, York. You know, give me the 3 Ascot 3-roll races there, because I think you know how good the horses are, but there's still improvement in them. There's still juice in the market, and that's where you still can get your edge. You can find a bit of an angle.
Okay, now talking of angles, you produce your own speed figures for the flat. So, I mean, is that literally a case of sitting there with your stopwatch?
No, it's just a lot of spreadsheets. I actually pay someone else to input the data because it's so time intensive. And again, I think my edge is interpreting the numbers and then I'm attaching them to video analysis. So the quicker I can get that number in the system is better. But yeah, it's basically, you know, you're taking the times of the race, you're putting them into specific spreadsheets for each race course with our own standard times, and then you're adjusting for class and time of year, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, fillies races or not. And then, you know, you'll adjust it depending if there's a race that was particularly slowly run. You know, you take that out of the equation, and that gives you a decent judge of the numbers. And yeah, I mean, that laptop there is basically just full of years and years of spreadsheets.
Okay, now so you do your own flat figures, but you use Andy Holdings, great judge, previous interviewee,
Yep.
For the ratings for the jump. So why don't you create your own? Because not everybody, but a lot of people will be taking notice of what Andy Holdings says already. So your edge is a little bit eliminated there.
Well, that is true, and we're very good friends, Andy. I've known him for nearly 20 years now, and I've never told him this, but I am a little bit annoyed with him for putting his figures online. But they're really good. But again, I think the key is interpreting them. So using Andy's basically saves me that jump to actually getting them in the system. But you're right. What would have been a 4-to-1 shot a few years ago is now a 2-to-1 shot a lot of the time if Andy's giving it a good talk up and it's on the numbers. But it's, yeah, I mean, I prefer flat to jump, so I don't think I'd have the interest to do all the jumps figures, and they are just very good. I mean, he did tell me on the phone jokingly to plug his numbers, but I said I don't need to plug them.
As he's your mate, has he given you the secret ingredient?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't see how the sausage is made. Put it that way.
So he's kept something close to his chest.
Well,
the actual methodology behind it.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Methodology, yeah. Which I think was a Mark Johnson, 2-year-old. No, So it's interesting because I think my numbers are better. The flat numbers are more reliable than his flat numbers a little bit. And I've never actually sat down and said, "What are you doing that I'm not?" And you can adjust the numbers to, you know, people will take weight into account, for example, which I think is absolute codswallop. You know, 4 pounds on a horse. I mean, if I was running against Usain Bolt and he was carrying a couple of bags of sugar, you could give him all the sugar in the world and he'd still beat me. So I think class is the big thing there. But no, he's not told me how the sausage is made. But we do regularly have chats where he goes, "Oh, this horse did so-and-so off the bend at Wolverhampton," and I'll just go, "Just remind me again, that's good, right, mate?" that's because you do, I'm using your stuff. So you just tell me if that closing section was great, because I can't see your spreadsheet.